The transport ship Horizon drifted quietly through space near the edge of the Kepler system. Inside the large vessel, 847 people were sleeping in their travel pods, dreaming of their new home on New Terra. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the quiet corridors, checking systems on his night shift. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, the type of person families trusted to carry them safely across the dangerous void between stars. Jake stopped at the observation deck where the stars shone like diamonds against the black canvas of space. Tomorrow they would arrive at New Terra, where these families would build new lives. He smiled thinking about the children aboard. 156 kids, from tiny babies to teenagers, all excited about their new world. Down in the family quarters, 10-year-old Katie Sullivan was awake, pressed against her small window. She loved watching the stars move past. Her father slept in the bunk below, exhausted from helping organize the colonists' supplies. Katie's mother had died too, years ago, and this journey to New Terra was supposed to be their fresh start. The ship's computer made a soft chime. Jake walked to the bridge and checked the sensors. Nothing unusual appeared on the screens. The stars looked the same as always, but something felt wrong. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. 3 hours later, the sensors screamed. Jake ran to the bridge as red lights flashed everywhere. On the main screen, 5 ships appeared out of nowhere. They were black and angular, covered in sharp edges like broken glass. The vessels moved with perfect coordination, surrounding the horizon like hunting wolves. "What are they?" asked Lisa Chun, Jake's second in command. She was young but smart, always calm under pressure. "I don't know," Jake said, his hands flying over the controls. "They're not in any database. Send a distress signal to Earth. Full emergency broadcast." The alien ships moved closer. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, like deadly art sculptures floating in space. Strange symbols glowed along their hulls. The largest ship was 3 times bigger than the Horizon. "Captain," Lisa said, her voice tight with fear, "they're jamming our communications. The distress signal isn't getting through." Jake felt his heart sink. The Horizon was a civilian transport, not a warship. They had no weapons, only basic shields meant to protect against space debris. Whatever these aliens wanted, Jake's people were helpless. A beam of blue light shot from the lead alien ship and struck the Horizon. The entire vessel shook. Lights flickered and died. The engines stopped humming. "They've disabled our main power," Lisa reported. "We're dead in the water." Throughout the ship, families woke up as emergency lighting kicked in. Children started crying. Parents held them close, whispering that everything would be okay. But Jake knew better. Nothing about this would be okay. The aliens attached boarding tubes to the Horizon's hull. Jake heard the sound of cutting tools slicing through metal. They were coming inside. "All hands to emergency stations," Jake announced over the ship's intercom. "This is not a drill. Protect the children at all costs." The adult colonists moved quickly. They had practiced these drills, though nobody thought they would ever need them. Fathers and mothers formed protective circles around their kids. The older teenagers helped carry the babies to the safest areas of the ship. Katie Sullivan's father, Danny, woke up when the alarm started. He was a construction worker, strong and tough, but his hands shook as he reached for Katie. "Dad, what's happening?" Katie asked. "Bad people are trying to get on our ship," Danny said. "But I won't let them hurt you, I promise." The first aliens came through the hull breach like nightmares made real. They were tall and thin, covered in shells that looked like green crystal. Their heads were triangular with too many eyes, and they moved on 6 legs that clicked against the metal floor. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Jake and 20 other men tried to stop them. They used tools and furniture as weapons, fighting desperately to protect their families. But the aliens were faster and stronger. Their weapons fired beams that made humans collapse, paralyzed but awake. The alien leader entered the ship last. He was bigger than the others, with golden patterns on his crystal shell. This was Hive Lord Vexthara, though the humans didn't know his name. He looked at the fallen humans with cold satisfaction. "Separate them," Vexthara commanded in his own language. His voice sounded like breaking glass. "Adults for the labor ships. Children for processing." The other aliens understood. They had done this many times before on many different worlds. To them, this was just another harvest. Katie watched in horror as alien soldiers grabbed her father. Danny tried to fight, but the paralyzing beam had made him weak. "Katie, run!" He shouted, but there was nowhere to run. The aliens were everywhere, herding families like cattle. Katie saw her friend Bobby Martinez crying as they took his parents away. She saw Mrs. Peterson trying to hold onto her baby while alien claws pulled them apart. "The young ones go to the processing ship," Vexthara ordered. "Begin neural mapping immediately. Their minds are still soft enough to reshape." Katie didn't understand the alien language, but she understood fear. Something terrible was about to happen to all the children. She remembered her father's emergency beacon, a small device he kept for absolute emergencies. While the aliens were busy with other families, Katie crawled under some fallen cargo. Her small fingers found the beacon in her father's dropped tool bag. She activated it the way he had taught her, sending out a distress call through quantum space. The message would travel faster than light, reaching Earth in minutes instead of years. "This is Katie Sullivan on the transport ship Horizon," she whispered into the device. "We're in the Kepler system. Aliens attacked our ship. They took us. They took all the kids. Please help us. Please find us. They're hurting people. They're taking us away from our families." An alien spotted her and made a harsh noise. Claws grabbed Katie and pulled her from her hiding spot. The beacon fell from her hands, its message already sent into the void. The aliens loaded all the children onto their ship. Katie counted them as they were pushed into holding cells. 156 kids, just like she remembered. Some were crying. Some were too scared to make any sound. The babies didn't understand what was happening. Through the transparent walls of her cell, Katie could see her father and the other adults being taken to different ships. Danny was shouting her name, trying to break free from his alien captors. Their eyes met for a moment across the space between ships. "I love you, Katie," Danny called out. "Be strong. Help is coming." But Katie didn't know if help would really come. Space was so big, and Earth was so far away. Would anyone even hear her message? Would anyone care about a ship full of colonists? And their children? The alien ships began to move, leaving the crippled horizon behind. The children pressed against the walls of their cells, watching their old life disappear into the darkness. They were alone now, prisoners of creatures they didn't understand, traveling to a fate they couldn't imagine. In the largest ship, Vexthara studied his new prizes. Human children were rare in the galaxy. Their minds could be shaped and molded, turned into perfect servants for the Zelkari Empire. The younger ones would forget their human lives completely. The older ones would require more work, but they would break eventually. What Vexthara didn't know was that Katie's message had already reached Earth. At that very moment, alarms were sounding in military bases across the solar system. Humans were reading the words of a frightened child begging for help. The Zelkari had made a mistake. They thought they were just harvesting another group of weak aliens. They had no idea they had just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Katie Sullivan pressed her face against the cold wall of her cell and whispered a prayer. Somewhere in the darkness of space, her message was traveling home. Soon, everyone on Earth would know what had happened. Soon, humanity would show the Zelkari what happened when someone took their children. Katie Sullivan's message reached Earth in 3 minutes and 27 seconds. The quantum beacon signal cut through space like a knife, carrying the desperate words of a 10-year-old girl across impossible distances. The message arrived at the Colonial Defense Network headquarters on Luna Station, where computers immediately flagged it as Priority Alpha. Lieutenant Bobby Chun was working the night shift in the communications center. He was tired, drinking his 4th cup of coffee and thinking about his daughter back on Earth. She was 9 years old, just a year younger than the girl whose voice now filled the quiet room. "This is Katie Sullivan on the transport ship Horizon. We're in the Kepler system. Aliens attacked our ship. They took us. They took all the kids. Please help us. Please find us. They're hurting people. They're taking us away from our families." Bobby's coffee cup hit the floor and shattered. The hot liquid splashed across his boots, but he didn't notice. He played the message again, then again. Each time, Katie's frightened voice made his hands shake more. He reached for the emergency alert button and slammed it down. Red lights began flashing throughout Luna Station. Within minutes, every senior officer in the Colonial Defense Network was awake and rushing to the command center. Admiral Helen Carter arrived first. She was a small woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had been fighting pirates and hostile aliens for 20 years, but she had never heard anything like Katie's message. "Play it again," Admiral Carter ordered. Bobby played the recording. In the command center, 30 officers listened to a child begging for help. The room fell completely silent. Several people had tears in their eyes. General Marcus Rodriguez, a tough man who had fought in the Mars Rebellion, was clenching his fists so hard his knuckles were white. "How many people were on the Horizon?" Admiral Carter asked. 847 total, replied Colonel Sandra Hayes, checking her computer. 156 were children, ages from 6 months to 17 years. Admiral. Carter closed her eyes. She had 2 grandchildren herself. The thought of alien monsters taking human children made something cold and hard form in her chest. "What do we know about this attack?" she asked. Dr. Amy Rodriguez, the head of xenobiology research, stepped forward. She was Sandra's younger sister, a brilliant scientist who studied alien life forms. "The description matches reports from other star systems," she said. "Ships that appear from nowhere, crystal-like beings, coordinated attacks on civilian vessels. We've been getting these reports for 3 years, but they were always from alien species. This is the first time they've attacked humans." "What do they want?" asked General Rodriguez. "They're called the Zelkari Empire," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "They're slavers, but not the kind we understand. They don't just want workers. They take people and change them, reshape their minds. Adults become mindless laborers. Children are processed into something else entirely. Processed how?" "Admiral." Carter's voice was deadly quiet. Dr. Rodriguez swallowed hard. "They use biotechnology to alter brain chemistry. They can erase memories, change personalities, even rewrite basic survival instincts. A human child put through their system comes out as a Zelkari drone. The person they were before is completely gone." The silence in the room was like a physical wait. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Somewhere out there, 156 human children were about to have their minds destroyed. Captain Luke Harrison stood up from his chair. He was the commander of the stealth ship Nightfall, a vessel so secret that most people in the room didn't know it existed. "Permission to begin immediate pursuit, Admiral." "Granted," Admiral Carter said without hesitation. "Take whatever you need." "I need everything," Luke said. "This isn't a rescue mission. This is war," Admiral Carter nodded. "Dr. Rodriguez, I want everything you know about the Zelkari sent to all our ships. Colonel Hayes, contact Mars Command and Earth Defense. Tell them to begin full mobilization." "Full mobilization?" Colonel Hayes looked surprised. "Admiral, that's every ship we have. it would leave the solar system almost undefended. The solar system doesn't matter if we let alien monsters take our children, Admiral Carter replied. Send the order. News of the attack spread through human space faster than anyone expected. The government tried to keep it quiet at first, but Katie's message had been heard by too many people. Within hours, every human colony knew what had happened to the horizon. The reaction was unlike anything in human history. On Earth, millions of people gathered in the streets. They weren't protesting or rioting. They were volunteering. Military recruitment centers were overwhelmed with people wanting to join the rescue mission. Captain Sarah Martinez was at home with her family when the news reached New Angeles. She was a retired Marine, 45 years old, with 3 children of her own. When she saw Katie's face on the news screen, she kissed her kids goodbye and drove straight to the nearest military base. "I want to volunteer," she told the recruiter. "Ma'am, you've been out of service for 8 years, the young man said. "Those aliens took our kids," Sarah replied. "Age doesn't matter. Experience does." The recruiter looked at her military record on his computer. Sarah had been a Special Forces commander, decorated for bravery in 4 different campaigns. "Welcome back, Captain," he said. Similar scenes played out across human space. Old soldiers came out of retirement. Civilian pilots offered their ships. Factory workers volunteered to build weapons. The phrase "they took our kids" became a rallying cry that united humanity like never before. Dr. Peter Collins, a military psychologist, was called in to brief the senior commanders. He was a thin man with thick glasses who specialized in alien psychology. His job was to help humans understand how other species thought. "The Zelkari made a fundamental error," he explained to the assembled officers. "They don't understand human family bonds. Their species reproduces through cloning. They have no concept of parents and children as we know them." "What does that mean for us?" asked General Rodriguez. "It means they have no idea what they've just triggered," Dr. Collins sighed. "Most species in the galaxy see children as replaceable resources. Lose some, make more. Humans are different. Our children require years of intensive care to survive. This creates emotional bonds that are literally programmed into our brains by millions of years of evolution." Admiral Carter leaned forward. "Are you saying we're more protective of our young than other species?" "I'm saying that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy when their children are threatened," Dr. Collins replied. "The Zelkari have never faced anything like what's coming for them." On Mars, the great shipyards that had been building peaceful exploration vessels immediately switched to military production. Engineer Tony Garcia had been designing a new class of research ship. Now he was redesigning it as a warship, adding armor and weapon systems that had never been tested in combat. "How long do we have?" asked his supervisor, Maria Santos. "The Nightfall will reach the Zelkari in 2 weeks," Tony sighed. "But Captain Harrison is just the advance scout. The real fleet won't be ready for a month." Maria nodded. "Then we have a month to build ships that can end this war." Back on Luna Station, Admiral Carter was reading reports from across human space. The response was overwhelming. Every human military unit was mobilizing. Reserve fleets were being activated. Weapons that had been in storage for decades were being loaded onto ships. But the most important report came from intelligence. Agent Kevin Murphy had been tracking Zelkari movements for months. His data showed that the aliens were retreating to their main base in the Proxima Draconis system. "It's a fortress," Murphy explained, "built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. They've been using it to process captured beings from dozens of species. If the human children are still alive, that's where they'll be." Admiral Carter studied the tactical data. The Zelkari base was heavily defended, surrounded by minefields and patrol ships. A direct assault would be costly and might fail. "We need a different approach," she said. "Something they won't expect." Captain Harrison contacted the Admiral from deep space. His ship was already halfway to Zelkari territory, invisible to their sensors. "I've been studying their communication patterns," he reported. "They're confused. Our response is unlike anything in their database. They expected us to either run away or try to negotiate." "What are they doing now?" Admiral Carter asked. "Preparing for a conventional fleet battle," Harrison said. "They're moving ships to defend their main base. They think we'll attack like every other species they've fought." Admiral Carter smiled for the first time since hearing Katie's message. "Then they're in for a surprise. Humans don't fight like other species." The Admiral called a meeting of her senior staff. In the conference room, she laid out a plan that would have been impossible for any other species to execute. It required perfect coordination, advanced technology, and a level of commitment that most aliens couldn't understand. "The Zelkari think they know how wars are fought," she explained. "Ship against ship, fleet against fleet. They've never faced an enemy that was willing to sacrifice everything to save children." Colonel Hayes looked at the battle plans. "This is incredibly risky, Admiral. If it fails, we could lose everything." Captain Luke Harrison's ship Nightfall drifted silently through space like a ghost. The vessel was completely invisible to Zelkari sensors, using technology so advanced that even most humans didn't know it existed. Luke sat in his command chair, watching the enemy ships on his screen. 2 weeks had passed since Katie Sullivan's message reached Earth. 2 weeks of the human children being held prisoner by alien monsters. Luke felt sick thinking about what those kids were going through. He had a daughter himself back on Earth. She was 12 years old, close to Katie's age. "Captain, we found them," reported Lieutenant Sandra Kim, his sensor operator. She was young but brilliant, the best tracker in the human fleet. 3 Zelkari ships just jumped into the system. They're heading for the big asteroid base. Luke studied the tactical display. The Proxima Draconis system was like a fortress. The main Zelkari base was built inside a massive asteroid, surrounded by defense platforms and patrol ships. It was where they processed their captured prisoners, turning free beings into mindless slaves. "Any sign of the children?" Luke asked. "The bioscanners are picking up human life signs inside the asteroid," Sandra replied. "But the readings are strange, some kind of interference." Dr. Rachel Wong, the ship's science officer, looked worried. She was an expert on alien technology, especially the kind used to control minds. "The interference might be from neural processing equipment," she said. "If they're already trying to change the children's brains, ... Luke didn't let her finish. "How long until the main fleet arrives?" "Admiral Carter's ships are still 2 weeks out," Sandra said. "The Zelkari don't know they're coming." Luke made a decision that would have gotten him court-martialed in peacetime. But these weren't peaceful times. Human children were in danger, and that changed everything. "We're going in alone," he announced. His crew looked surprised. The Nightfall was a scout ship, not a battleship. They were supposed to gather information and wait for reinforcements. But everyone on the ship understood why Luke couldn't wait. Every day those children spent with the Zelkari was another day. Their minds were being destroyed. "What's the plan, Captain?" asked Sergeant Danny Kim, the ship's Special Forces leader. He was Sandra's older brother, a tough Marine who specialized in boarding enemy ships. "We can't fight them directly," Luke said. "But we don't have to. The Zelkari think in patterns. They expect enemies to attack their strongest points. We're going to hit them where they're weakest." Luke's plan was simple but dangerous. Instead of attacking the main base, they would strike at the Zelkari supply ships and patrol vessels. Each attack would be fast and silent, leaving no survivors to report what happened. The Zelkari would start losing ships without knowing why. The first target was a patrol ship on the outer edge of the system. It was smaller than the Nightfall, but heavily armed. Luke's ship approached from behind, using the shadow of a dead planet. To hide their approach, in position, Sandra reported. Danny, take your team and board that ship, Luke ordered. Plant the virus packages and get out, no witnesses. Sergeant Kim nodded. He and 5 other Marines put on their spacesuits and loaded into the boarding pod. These weren't ordinary Marines. They were part of a special unit trained for operations that officially didn't exist. Their job was to do things that regular soldiers couldn't do. The boarding pod attached to the Zulkari ship without making a sound. Danny's team cut through the hull using plasma torches that worked without light or noise. The Zulkari inside never knew they were being boarded. The aliens were tall and thin, covered in green crystal shells. They moved on 6 legs and communicated through clicking sounds. To Danny, they looked like giant insects. But these insects had taken human children, and that made them his enemies. Danny's team moved through the ship like shadows. They planted virus devices in the computer systems and sabotaged the life support networks. The viruses were Dr. Wong's creation, designed to spread through Zulkari networks and cause chaos. Package delivered, Danny reported over his radio. Getting out now. The Marines returned to the Nightfall just as the Zulkari ship began to malfunction. Systems failed one by one. The aliens tried to send a distress signal, but the virus had corrupted their communications. Within minutes, the ship was dead in space. Target eliminated, Luke reported to Admiral Carter on Earth. No survivors, no distress call. Good work, Captain, the Admiral replied. Continue the hunt. Over the next week, Luke's team destroyed 6 more Zulkari ships. Each attack was perfect. The enemy vessels simply disappeared without a trace. The Zulkari command began to worry. Ships were vanishing from their patrol routes, but they had no idea why. Hive Lord Vex Thara stood in his command center inside the asteroid base, studying reports from his ship captains. He was the leader of this sector of the Zulkari Empire, responsible for processing captured beings from dozens of worlds. He had never faced a problem like this. 7 ships lost in 8 days, reported his second-in-command, Sublord Kethara. No wreckage found, no distress signals received. Vex Thora's multiple eyes focused on the tactical display. What do our scouts report? Nothing unusual, my lord. The human fleet is still 2 weeks away from our system. These losses must be from some other cause. But Vex Thara was starting to understand that humans were different from other species the Zulkari had conquered. The captured adults from the transport ship had been impossible to break. They fought constantly, refused to work, and kept trying to escape. Most alien prisoners gave up after a few days. These humans had been fighting for 2 weeks. The human children were even more troublesome. The Zulkari neural processing systems were designed to erase memories and rewrite personalities. But the human children were resisting in ways the aliens had never seen. 10-year-old Katie Sullivan had become a leader among the captive kids. She had figured out how to communicate with children from other species who were also prisoners. Together, they had sabotaged 3 processing machines and started 2 small riots. The human young are defective, Sublord Kethara complained. Their minds refuse to integrate properly. Then we will use stronger methods, Vex Thara decided. Begin the advanced processing protocols. But Vex Thara didn't know that Dr. Wong had been monitoring Zulkari communications from the Nightfall. Her sensors had detected the neural processing signals coming from the asteroid base. What she discovered made her blood run cold. Captain, you need to see this, she called Luke to her laboratory. I've been analyzing the alien mind control technology. It's worse than we thought. Luke looked at the data on her screens. What am I seeing? Brain scans of the human children, Dr. Wong explained. The Zulkari have been trying to erase their memories for 2 weeks, but it's not working. Human brains are more complex than they expected. The children are fighting back. On a neurological level, is that good or bad? Luke asked. Both, Dr. Wong said grimly. The good news is that the children are still themselves. The bad news is that the Zelkari are getting frustrated. I'm detecting preparation for something called advanced processing protocols. Luke felt his heart sink. What does that mean? I think it means they're going to use more extreme methods. Methods that might destroy the children's minds completely, even if they can't control them. Luke knew he couldn't wait for the main fleet anymore. The children were running out of time. He made another decision that would have been impossible for any other species to understand. We're going to attack the base directly, he announced. To his crew, Sir, that's suicide, Sandra protested. One ship against a fortress? Not if we're smart about it, Luke replied. The Zelkari think like a collective. They expect coordinated attacks from multiple directions. They don't understand individual initiative. Luke's new plan was insane by military standards, but it made perfect sense to a human parent. He would take the Nightfall straight into the heart of the enemy base, using their own tactics against them. Dr. Wong had discovered something important about Zelkari biology. Their hive-mind communication system worked on specific brain frequencies. If those frequencies were disrupted, the individual aliens would lose contact with their collective consciousness. I can build disruption devices, she explained. But they're short range. We have to get close to use them. How close? Luke asked. Inside the base itself. Luke nodded. Then that's where we're going. The plan required perfect timing. Danny's Marines would board the asteroid base and plant the disruption devices while Luke created a distraction with the ship. The devices would cause chaos among the Zelkari defenders, giving the Marines time to find and rescue the children. It was a plan that depended on human qualities the Zelkari couldn't understand. Individual courage, personal initiative, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of children who weren't even their own. This is probably a one-way trip, Luke warned his crew. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship can do so now. Nobody moved. Every person on the Nightfall had volunteered for this mission, knowing the risks. They had all heard Katie Sullivan's message. They all understood what was at stake. Then let's go get our kids, Luke said. The Nightfall began its approach to the Zelkari base. On the asteroid's surface, alien sensors detected the approaching human ship. Defense platforms powered up their weapons. Patrol ships moved to intercept. The Nightfall approached the Zelkari asteroid base like a hunting wolf. Captain Luke Harrison sat in his command chair, watching the enemy defenses come alive on his screens. Weapon platforms tracked his ship while patrol vessels moved to intercept. But Luke wasn't worried about the ships he could see. He was thinking about the children trapped somewhere inside that massive rock. Marine teams away, reported Sergeant Danny Kim from the launch bay. All pods clear and running silent. Luke nodded, while the Zelkari focused on his ship, 12. Small boarding pods were drifting toward the asteroid like pieces of space debris. Each pod carried highly trained Marines equipped with Dr. Wong's neural disruptor devices. Their job was to get inside the base and create chaos. Beginning attack run, Luke announced to his crew. Make it look good. The Nightfall suddenly accelerated toward the nearest defense platform. Zelkari weapons opened fire, filling space with deadly energy beams. Luke dodged and weaved between the shots, making his ship look like it was trying to fight its way through to the base. Inside the asteroid, alarms began wailing. Hive Lord Vex Thara rushed to his command center, his 6 legs clicking rapidly on the metal floor. On the tactical displays, he could see a single human ship attacking his fortress. One ship? He asked his second-in-command. They attack with one ship? Sublord Kathara was equally confused. Perhaps it is a suicide run, my lord. Humans are known to be emotional and illogical. Vexthara studied the battle. The human ship was fast and clever, but it was clearly outnumbered. Increase firepower. Destroy it quickly. But while the Zelkari concentrated on the space battle, Danny Kim's Marines were already inside the base. The boarding pods had attached to maintenance shafts on the asteroid's surface. The aliens never expected enemies to attack from below. Danny cut through the metal with his plasma torch and dropped into a dark corridor. The base was huge, carved from solid rock and metal. Emergency lights flashed red, and the air smelled like chemicals and fear. Teams Alpha and Beta, secure the power generators, Danny whispered into his radio. Team Charlie, find the children. Everyone else, plant the disruptors. The Marines moved through the base like ghosts. They had studied the layout from Intercepted Zelkari communications. Dr. Wong had mapped the facility using sensor readings from the Nightfall. They knew where to go. Team Charlie, led by Corporal Alex Thompson, headed for the detention levels. Alex was a father of 3, and seeing the alien prison cells made him angry. The walls were covered with strange symbols that seemed to move and change. The air hummed with energy from machines designed to break minds. Contact, Alex whispered as 2 Zelkari guards came around a corner. The aliens were tall and thin, their crystal shells gleaming under the harsh lights. They carried weapons that looked like living metal. Alex and his team moved fast. Their rifles fired special bullets designed to shatter Zelkari shells without making much noise. The guards fell before they could raise an alarm. Detention level secured, Alex reported. Beginning search for the children. In another part of the base, Corporal Ben Parker was placing Dr. Wong's neural disruptor devices near the main communication center. The devices were small but powerful, designed to broadcast interference on the exact frequencies the Zelkari used for their hive mind. Ben had lost his own son in a shuttle accident 3 years ago. The boy would have been Katie Sullivan's age now. As he planted the devices, Ben thought about all the parents back on Earth who were waiting for their children to come home. Disruptors in position, Ben reported. Ready to activate on your signal. Outside, the space battle was getting more intense. Luke's ship was taking damage from the defense platforms, but he kept attacking. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, and smoke filled the bridge. Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Lieutenant Sandra Kim. Shields down to 30%. Hold. Position, Luke ordered. Danny's teams need more time. Admiral Helen Carter's main fleet was still hours away. Luke knew his ship probably wouldn't survive long enough to see them arrive. But that didn't matter. All that mattered was getting the children out of alien hands. Deep inside the asteroid, Katie Sullivan heard explosions echoing through the corridors. The sounds were different from the usual base operations. These were weapon sounds, the sounds of fighting. What's happening? Asked Bobby Martinez, a 12-year-old boy from New Angeles. He was in the cell next to Katie's, along with his little sister Maria. I think someone's trying to rescue us, Katie whispered. She pressed her ear against the metal wall, listening to the distant sounds of battle. Her heart was beating fast with hope and fear. The other children heard her words and began to whisper among themselves. After 2 weeks of terror, they were afraid to believe that help had finally come. But the sounds were getting closer. Corporal Alex Thompson and his team reached the detention level just as the first neural disruptor activated. The effect on the Zelkari was immediate and devastating. Aliens throughout the base suddenly lost contact with their collective consciousness. Individual Zelkari began screaming in confusion. They were used to thinking as part of a group mind. Without that connection, they didn't know how to function. Some collapsed on the floor, overwhelmed by the strange experience of being alone in their own minds. Disruptors working perfectly, Ben Parker reported. The bugs are going crazy. Alex found the first group of human children behind a heavy metal door. They were weak and scared, but alive. Katie Sullivan was among them, and she looked up at Alex with eyes that had seen too much. Are you here to take us home? She asked, in a small voice. Yes, sweetheart, Alex said, his voice tight with emotion. We're taking you home." But even as Alex's team began freeing the children, Hive Lord Vexthara was making a terrible decision. The Zelkari leader could see that his base was under attack from within. The humans had somehow infiltrated his fortress and were disrupting his entire operation. In his rage and desperation, Vexthara decided that if he couldn't keep the human children, no one could have them. He activated the base's self-destruct system. "If we cannot process them, we will destroy them," he announced to his confused subordinates. "The humans will learn that defying the Zelkari Empire has consequences." Deep in the base's core, nuclear charges began to arm themselves. The countdown started at 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, the entire asteroid would explode, taking everyone inside with it. Dr. Wang detected the nuclear activation from the nightfall. "Captain, they're going to blow the base," she shouted over the noise of battle. "Nuclear self-destruct." 10 minutes and counting. Luke felt his blood turn to ice. 10 minutes wasn't enough time to evacuate everyone. The children were scattered throughout the base, and some of the Marines were still fighting their way to the detention levels. "All teams, this is Harrison," he broadcast on all channels. "Base is set to explode in 10 minutes. Emergency evacuation. All personnel." But even as he gave the order, Luke knew it was hopeless. The base was too big, and there were too many children to rescue in such a short time. That's when the human fleet arrived. Admiral Carter's ships dropped out of hyperspace like avenging angels. Dozens of warships surrounded the Zelkari base, their weapons charging. But they weren't there to fight a space battle. They were there to save children. "This is Admiral Carter to all Zelkari forces," the Admiral broadcast on all frequencies. "Surrender immediately and deactivate your self-destruct, or we will reduce your base to atoms." Hive Lord Vexthara ignored the warning. His mind was focused on revenge. If he couldn't win, he would make the humans pay by destroying what they cared about most. But the Admiral had come prepared for this situation. Her ships carried experimental teleportation equipment, technology that had never been tested in combat. It was designed to transport people through solid matter over short distances. "Begin emergency extraction," Admiral Carter ordered. "Get our people out of there." Blue beams of light shot from the human ships toward the asteroid. The teleportation system locked onto human life signs inside the base and began pulling them to safety. One by one, the Marines and children began disappearing from the detention levels and reappearing in the medical bays of the rescue ships. Katie Sullivan felt a strange tingling sensation, and then everything around her dissolved into blue light. When her vision cleared, she was lying on a soft bed in a clean white room. A woman in a medical uniform was checking her vital signs. "Welcome back, sweetheart," the doctor said with a kind smile. "You're safe now, but not everyone made it out in time." Deep in the base, Corporal Ben Parker was still trying to reach a group of younger children who had been separated from the others. The nuclear countdown was at 3 minutes when he found them. 8 kids between the ages of 4 and 7, too scared to move. "It's okay," Ben told them gently. "I'm here to help." Ben activated his emergency beacon, knowing the teleportation system would lock onto his signal. But the children had to be touching him for the system to transport them all together. He gathered the 8 kids in his arms, holding them close. The blue light began to form around them just as the countdown reached 0. The nuclear charges detonated, turning the asteroid into a ball of fire and radiation. But Ben and the children were already gone, transported to safety in the last possible second. 3 days after the rescue, all the human children were safe aboard medical ships heading back to Earth. Katie Sullivan sat in a hospital bed, holding her father's hand and looking out at the stars. She was thin and tired, but the doctors said she would be fine. All the children would recover from their ordeal. The neural processing machines had failed to break any of the human kids. Dr. Rachel Wong had examined every child and found their minds completely intact. The Zelkari technology couldn't handle the complexity of human emotions and family bonds. Why didn't it work on us? Katie asked Dr. Wong during one of her check dash-ups. Dr. Wong smiled and sat down beside the bed. Because you remembered who you were, she explained. The aliens tried to erase your memories, but you held on to the love your family gave you. That love was stronger than their machines. But Admiral Helen Carter wasn't satisfied with just rescuing the children. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at reports from across Zelkari space. The aliens were retreating from their outer territories, pulling back to defend their core worlds. They think this is over, Admiral Carter said to her staff officers. They think we'll be satisfied with getting our kids back and go home. Colonel Sandra Hayes looked uncomfortable. Admiral, the children are safe. Mission accomplished. Command is asking when we'll return to Earth. We're not going home, Admiral Carter replied firmly. Not yet. The Admiral walked to the communication center and activated the ship's most powerful transmitter. Her message would reach every inhabited star system in a 100 light-year radius. Every spacefaring civilization would hear what she had to say. This is Admiral Helen Carter of the Human Colonial Defense Force, she began. 3 weeks ago, the Zelkari Empire attacked a civilian transport vessel and kidnapped 156 human children. We have now rescued our children and eliminated the Zelkari forces responsible for their capture. The Admiral's voice was calm but deadly serious. This message serves as notice to all species in the galaxy. Human children are absolutely protected. Any threat to them, any attempt to harm them, will result in the complete destruction of those responsible. This is not a negotiation. This is not a warning. This is a promise. The message traveled across space at faster than light speeds, reaching alien civilizations that had never heard of humans before. On a dozen different worlds, alien leaders listened to Admiral Carter's words and felt a chill run through their beings. Dr. Sam Rogers, humanity's first ambassador to other species, was called in to explain what the Admiral's message meant. He was a calm, scholarly man who specialized in interspecies relations, but even he looked grim as he briefed the alien delegates. Humans evolved differently than most species, he explained to a gathering of alien representatives on the neutral world of Kepler Prime. Our children require intensive care for many years to survive. This created powerful emotional bonds between parents and offspring. A delegate from the Crystalline Vorthan Collective spoke up. Many species care for their young. This is not unusual. Dr. Rogers shook his head. You don't understand the depth of human parental instincts. When a human child is threatened, parents don't just feel angry or sad. They feel something that completely changes their behavior. They become willing to die, to kill, to destroy anything that threatens their offspring. But surely this applies only to their own children, said a representative from the Aquatic Depths Kingdom. No, Dr. Rogers replied. The protective instinct extends to all human children. A human parent will fight just as hard to save a stranger's child as their own. It's programmed into their basic psychology. The alien delegates looked skeptical until Dr. Rogers showed them footage from the rescue mission. They watched human soldiers risking their lives to save children they had never met. They saw Admiral Carter committing the entire human fleet to rescue kids from families she didn't know. This behavior is not rational by most species standards, Dr. Rogers admitted. But it's completely normal for humans. And now you know what happens when someone threatens human children. Back in Zelkari space, the alien empire was collapsing. Commander Tony Garcia led human strike forces that hunted down every Zelkari ship they could find. These weren't mercy missions. The humans were methodically destroying anything connected to child slavery or mind control. Tony had served in the military for 15 years, but he had never seen his fellow humans fight like this. They showed no mercy to the Zelkari, no hesitation. about destroying enemy ships. The phrase "they took our kids" had turned peaceful colonists into deadly warriors. The Zelkari tried to surrender several times, but the humans ignored their communications. Admiral Carter had made it clear that this wasn't about accepting surrender. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. On the Zelkari home world, the surviving members of their government watched in horror as human ships destroyed their space stations and orbital facilities. They had ruled 17 star systems for centuries, enslaving billions of beings. Now their empire was crumbling in a matter of weeks. High Hive Lord Zexmorth, the supreme leader of the Zelkari Empire, finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. He called an emergency session of the Collective Council, the governing body of their species. "The humans are not like other species," he admitted to the assembled leaders. "We captured their young thinking they were just another resource. We were wrong. How could we have known?" protested Sublord Vethkala. "No species has ever responded like this to standard harvesting operations. Because no other species bonds with their offspring the way humans do," Zexmorth replied. "We have studied their psychology. Human parents would rather die than let harm come to their children. They will sacrifice everything to protect them." The Zelkari tried everything they could think of to stop the human advance. They offered to return all their other slaves. They promised never to enter human space again. They even offered to become servants of the human empire. Admiral Carter rejected every offer. Her response was always the same: "You took our children. Face the consequences." The war lasted exactly 2 years. When it ended, the Zelkari Empire no longer existed. Their 17 star systems were liberated, their slave camps destroyed, their government scattered to the winds. Millions of enslaved beings from dozens of species were freed and returned to their home worlds. Katie Sullivan, now 12 years old, watched the victory celebration on Earth from her school classroom. The girl who had sent the desperate message that started the war was now a symbol of human determination. Her face appeared on posters throughout human space with the words, "Never again," written beneath it. "Do you think it was worth it?" asked her teacher, Mrs. Jennifer Adams. "All those ships destroyed, all those lives lost, just to rescue you and the other children." Katie thought about the question seriously. She remembered the terror of being captured, the fear that she would never see her father again, the desperation in her voice when she sent that first message. "It wasn't just about rescuing us," Katie said finally. "It was about making sure this never happens to any other kids." And she was right. Word of humanity's response spread throughout the galaxy. Other species learned that humans were not to be underestimated, especially when children were involved. Pirates who had preyed on family transports found other targets. Slave traders crossed human space off their maps entirely. The human child protection protocol became the most respected law in known space. Human patrol ships monitored trade routes and colony systems, watching for any sign of threats to children. The mere sight of a human warship was enough to make most criminals think twice about their actions. Dr. Peter Collins, the military psychologist, who had predicted the human response, wrote a report that became required reading in every alien military academy. His conclusion was simple: humans are peaceful by nature, but they become the most dangerous predators in the galaxy when their children are threatened. Any species that forgets this lesson does so at their own peril. 5 years after the war ended, Katie Sullivan graduated from high school and joined the Colonial Defense Force. She wanted to make sure that no other child would ever go through what she had experienced. Her first assignment was aboard a patrol ship monitoring the outer rim territories. On her first day of duty, Katie stood on the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human families were traveling to new worlds, confident that their children were safe. Pirates and slavers had learned to fear the sight of human ships. The galaxy was a safer place for all children, not just human ones, other Species had seen what happened when someone threatened human kids, and they had learned to protect their own young more carefully. The Human Child Protection Protocol had become a model for other civilizations. Admiral Carter, now retired, visited Katie before her first patrol mission. The old warrior looked at the young woman with pride. "Your message changed everything," she told Katie. One frightened little girl asking for help brought down an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. "I was just scared," Katie replied. "I wanted my dad." "And that's exactly why we won," Admiral Carter said. "Because humans understand that being scared for your children is the most powerful force in the universe."